Joseph Stalin, ruler of a sixth of the earth for 30 years, has been thrown from his pedestal. Colleague of Lenin in the stormy days when the Bolshevik Revolution shook the world, the man who took the mantle of Lenin when he died, Stalin is now officially branded a dictator by his own party through its spokesman, Comrade Khrushchev. The leader who is above criticism, the little father of his people, is convicted 3 years after his death of having ruled by terror. Lenin is said to have warned the party against giving Stalin too much power. Today, when thousands he purged are being declared innocent, when Russia has repaired the destruction of a war he would not foresee, his country must be remembering Lenin's warning. When Stalin died, his body was laid beside that of Lenin in the Red Square. Now Moscow's workers are petitioning to have it removed. But in those days, his colleagues would not dare to speak, for his name was still magic.
Destalinization was a complex process that the USSR endured over a period of years. During the Cold War, some leaders of the USSR pointed out Joseph Stalin's crimes and made efforts to remove them from the Union. Although some policies were kept for a longer time than others, a lot of Stalin's influence on the world around him faded to dust. Before we can explain the end of his influence, we must first briefly summarize Joseph Stalin's rule in the USSR. Joseph Stalin introduced many policies that were new to both the world and the USSR itself. Some of the most prominent changes included, but weren't limited to, rapid industrialization, the theory of socialism in one country, a totalitarian state, collectivization of agriculture, and a cult of personality, which was basically portraying a leader as great, valiant, and unbreakable. Stalinism promoted the escalation of class conflict, utilizing state violence to forcibly purge society of the bourgeoisie, whom Stalinist doctrine regarded as threats to the pursuit of the communist revolution. This policy resulted in substantial political violence and persecution of such people. People targeted by Stalin's purge, whether it was anti-revolutionaries or American/anti-communists, were sent to gulags. Gulags were labor camps for prisoners, similar to the labor camps used in the Holocaust. His rule was extremely strict, and the people of the USSR were forced to follow it without question. In these videos, Joseph Stalin conducted a victory parade for the Red Army to celebrate the defeat of Germany and fascism after World War II. Destalinization resulted from the desire of leaders like Khrushchev and the government of the USSR wanting to overcome the cult of personality that Stalin presided over the people and left behind. People opposed their movements and reforms because Stalin was placed on a high pedestal in not just the USSR, but communist countries abroad. To avoid backlash, Stalin's policies were reformed in secrecy by these leaders, often without explanation to the peoples. Because of the return of great amounts of people from prison camps and gulags, reform had to become public eventually. Khrushchev started an investigation against Stalin's activities on top of this. The investigations resulted that out of the almost 2 million people that were arrested for anti-Soviet actions, 688,503 people were executed, and the ones who lived confessed to being tortured by Stalin. Destalinization meant the heavy decrease of large-scale forced labor in the USSR. Gulag prisoners started to be freed by Lavrenti Beria, but he was executed and Khrushchev emerged as the leader of the USSR. The first official claim of de-Stalinization was in Khrushchev's famous secret speech. The speech was titled, "On the Cult of Personality and Its Consequences." He gave the speech to a closed session of the 20th Party Congress of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. He laid out some of Stalin's crimes, including the executions, and how Stalin caused feelings of fear and insecurity across the USSR. The listeners were shocked, as Khrushchev denounced Stalin's rule, knocked him off his pedestal, and labeled his cult of personality as inconsistent with the Communist Party's ideologies. He also denounced the Old Bolsheviks, a group that supported communism before the revolution and other corrupt crimes within the USSR. His comments led to a series of political reforms that removed or dismantled the Gulag labor camp, Stalin's cult of personality, and other institutions that helped Stalin hold power. Stalin acted not through persuasion, explanation, and patient cooperation with people, but by imposing his concepts and demanding absolute submission to his opinion. Whoever opposed this concept or tried to prove his point and the correctness of his position was doomed to removal from the leading collective and to subsequent moral and physical annihilation. Thousands of innocent persons had been executed at Stalin's order, and Stalin had been responsible for the ruthless mass deportation of ethnic minorities during World War II. Many theories were proposed during the Cold War in an attempt to explain Khrushchev's motivation for de-Stalinization. One historian said Khrushchev's motivation came from his morals and movement of the heart. Others said his motivation was to free party officials from the feeling of repression that Stalin imposed on them. Another popular theory was that the speech was made to take failure off the Communist Party and put it solely on Stalin to make the communists look and feel less guilty. Some of the major changes in de-Stalinization include but are not limited to: 1. Improved prison conditions. The Gulag prison system was made less harsh. Khrushchev allowed prisoners to contact their families while in camps, which wasn't allowed under Stalin. The Gulag institution was eventually removed in 1960 on top of that. 2. Renaming of places and buildings. Cities like Stalingrad or any buildings with Stalin's name included in them were changed, like the Joseph Stalin Palace of Culture and Science in Warsaw. Also, the USSR's national anthem was ripped of any references to the past leader. 3. Destruction of monuments. Thousands of statues and monuments of Stalin were destroyed to cover up his memory in both the USSR and other communist countries around the world. The large Stalin statue on Berlin's Stalinallee was one of the most prominent removals of these statues. However, the statues being removed in the video are shown in Prague and Budapest. De-Stalinization subsided after Khrushchev and picked back up under Mikhail Gorbachev, a later leader who implemented more policies to decrease Stalinist influence in the Second World. During the Cold War, many different opinions were developing around Stalin. Many adhered to his cult of personality and formed a communal identity around communism. They often praised him as a vanguard figure for the economic system. Stalin used posters and propaganda, like this one, to convince the people of the USSR that he was a very good man and he cared about and loved the people under his rule. He saw hope in the younger generation, and he wished for them to carry on his policies of Stalinism. These posters were used to help shape his cult of personality and show the people it was worth abiding by.